The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
Boom. We're recording, and we're live on Twitter, I think. Yeah. I'd never gone live on Twitter, so
I don't tweet.
You
ever.
don't tweet?
Nope.
You're not Twitter?
Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's enough.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't Snapchat either.
Right. I had a Snapchat for like 2.5 seconds, and I was like, "Nah, this is it.
Too much.
Send me." Yeah. Maybe I'm getting too old for that stuff. Anyway, here we are, the My Backstory podcast with Zamia Cohen.
Finally.
Yeah, seriously, we've been trying to do this podcast it's been at least 6 months. For sure.
At least. I can't remember when
Probably
I treated
more.
you first.
I don't remember either. I'm due though, by the way. Oh, for sure. I was telling Kathleen on my way over here, before I left, I was like, man, my QL is like killing me, like lately, just because like all the driving, the traveling, and like excuses. I just haven't been doing the right work, of like stretching and moving and like whatever.
Easy to skip.
Right. So, whenever the timing's right, we need to get together and do some more work. When you did that treatment on me the last time, when Zamia came over to the house and I couldn't feel my feet. Like it was bad, like really bad. And then you did the treatment on me and I was like, wow.
Yeah, right.
I could feel my feet.
And that was actually our first session.
Right.
When I came to you. And the bulk of what I did was scar release on all of your scars. And then I did some low back pain, some hip stuff. And I threw in some neuropathy stuff too, given that. But even just from the scar release, you started to get feeling back, which is people underestimate the power of scar tissue, even if things seem like they've healed fine and it doesn't. I mean, you knew it was creating pain, right. But sometimes you're like, I don't have any pain. And then I'll release a scar even just a first time. And they're like, oh, it's so much more open. I didn't realiise.
Yeah. My hips, I felt it in my hip flexors a lot. Because remember, I was trying to do that. I was trying to do the rock backs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like pinching in my hip flexor. And I was like, man, I can't like get that to release. And I had been to like physical therapy for at least 6 months trying to get that thing to like release. Like, I mean, she would dig into my hip flexors and that's painful. Like it hurts so bad. And I'd be sitting there like a grown man,
crying.
Like sitting there like tears in
tapping
my eyes.
Out.
Yeah, no, seriously, it hurts. Like,
oh no, that's legit. And it's just a very sensitive area given what it
for sure
surrounds, right?
Yeah. And she would get in there and try and release it and nothing would work. And then you did that therapy on it. And I was like, wow, and I can go back with like no pain.
And not that she was wrong. There's just so many reasons why things can give us issues and figuring out what the bigger contributors are is challenging sometimes.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Scar tissue pulls on everything in your body to some extent because everything's connected by all the fascia. Oh. So even if the scar is across your forehead, that doesn't mean it's not being influenced even the tiniest bit somewhere lower.
Right. I'm convinced that the one on my stomach is like adhesed to something somewhere, like whatever, creating some of the like digestive stuff,
100%.
Yeah.
I would absolutely agree with that because you think of all of the organs that sit in that cavity basically. And though we see the scar in front, we don't know exactly the extent of that scar tissue behind.
Yep.
And all of it's all connected by fascia.
For sure.
So if anything attached to that is being pulled or restricted or clamped down on in any capacity, it's definitely going to impact everything.
And I can feel it too, which is crazy. And so when you did the therapy on my stomach, that was probably the most painful, I think, for me, just because that's the most painful scar.
Right.
And I have like this bubble like come up like on the top of the scar. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Like, what did you do to me,
it's like intestines like coming out or something. And then it went away. Like it'd come up in the mornings usually, and then it would just like go away, like disappear. So I still to this day don't know what that was. Maybe it was just scar tissue.
And it might have been that we since we released the scar the first time, it created space. It opened up, and so something that wasn't able to move to a certain place now had the freedom to do it a little bit. It's interesting, and I love when people start to realize how connected everything is. When, especially if I'm not treating anywhere near where their pain is. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, this feels so much better. But it's scar release is probably one of my favorite things I mean, if I can get someone out of pain or less pain, period, I'm happy, whether it's through microcurrent point stimulation, which is currently what we're talking about, or just I'm also a trainer and nutrition. So even if it's with any of that, or corrective work, whatever, or lifestyle change is good. But scar release is probably one of my favorite things to do with this, with MPS, because it's just a really different way to treat scar tissue that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's probably things similar to this. I don't know about them yet. Everything I've ever been exposed to or tend to be told about from other people having been worked on, it's usually about breaking up scar tissue. I'm not saying it's bad, just totally different. This is about restoring health to that tissue so it functions more normally by bringing back the polarity or charge that it's supposed to have. So it's just a super different way to address scar tissue, and it's not invasive. Though it can have moments of discomfort, it's not painful. Sure. Like breaking up scar tissue can be really painful.
Yeah, they're doing that. I forget what it was called, where they were like taking like a kind of like a butter knife tool.
Grafton,
Gua Sha. That's exactly. Yeah.
I think Gua Sha is the more traditional, and then it's merged into just tool differences. I think I'm not positive. I've had it done. I'm not like markings on my back. I've had looks worse than it feels, generally speaking, at least from my experiencing it. But yeah, and again, not saying it's bad, just different. Find what your body responds well to and do that, and that can even change. But I really like it for scar release, including concussion work, because it's just a very different approach to changing that tissue and helping the body be healthier and move better and be in less pain.
Totally. So let's go into your story. I want to go from the very beginning, as far back as you want to go.
So here's what my dad would always say. It was a rainy night in January. No joke. That's literally forever what my dad would say on my birthday. It was a rainy night, apparently, in January. So my birthday is January 8th. We were living at the time in Upland. Don't worry, I'm not going to literally go through my entire life. Yeah. But from what I recall of the situation, so we lived in Upland. Hollywood, I'm about to get very stereotypical here. I was born in Hollywood. Oh. Hollywood was the closest hotel, was the closest hospital that allowed fathers, this was 1977, 42 for those who are curious, that allowed fathers in the room during delivery. Oh, wow. So that's where they drove to.
Sounds like a good man.
Yeah. So my dad was awesome. No longer living in this realm, depending on what you want to believe. Right. But yeah, he was awesome. So it was a rainy night. So, January 7th, I guess. I was born on the 8th in the morning at 5 a.m.
And wasn't your dad he was a botanist? Right?
Botanist and biologist. So my name, for those who are like, what's her name? My first name is Zamia, which is one of the oldest living plants. So I like to extrapolate out from that with being a survivor, durable, lasting a long time, sustainable. So he said he was just going through one of his books actually and came across that, and he's like, I don't even know if that's exactly how you say it. I'm like, we're just gonna go with it is.
I like your name.
I love my name, and the older I've gotten, the more I'm like, oh my God, my name suits me so well. Huh. So that's my first name, and then my middle name, and yes, I'm serious, I literally had to show someone my driver's license because they didn't believe me, is Sunflower, which totally, I literally follow the sun myself, which sunflowers do. And they're just like happy flowers. Totally. Right?
Agreed.
So so my dad had a big part, though technically left it up to my mom. I guess they agreed on Sunflower, but Zamia was up in the air. And when I was born, apparently I was more Zamia than anything else. So so botanist and biologist. The last number of years of his life, he taught biology, marine biology, diversity, anything plant, animal kind of related down in Orange County.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I grew up with a lot of that, but he was also a photographer for the first chunk of my life, on hiatus from academia. Yep. So I grew up very, though my transcript looks like a total science nerd, I actually grew up very art and science. I grew up singing and dancing, didn't get into sports really until high school.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Upland?
Was there until I was 7, and then my dad bought his first place in Laverne. So then I was in Laverne And ironically, a friend of mine now lives like a few blocks away from that house that I grew up in.
Did you go to Bonita or what?
I did not. I actually went to a prep school.
I'll check you out.
I was that kid on financial aid and scholarship and working. But it was great. I loved it. It's the Webb Schools in Claremont. It's a boarding and day school.
Totally.
It was so rad.
I remember hearing about that. Like, actually, someone had told me about it before, whatever, you just hear things. So I grew up kind of in the area.
Yep.
And my son, Brendan, is friends with a kid he goes to school with, and his brothers all go to the Webb schools or whatever. And I was like, really? And so Brendan's like, yeah, so he's going to go to junior high, like with us.
Gotcha.
And then in high school, he's going to leave to go to the Webb schools. And he's like really excited about it.
Yeah, it's an awesome school. My brother went there as well. It was, I don't remember when it was founded, like 50s or something like that. It was an all boys school until the 80s. It went co-ed in the 80s. Right. But I mean, for me, it was great. I loved it. I also loved school. I wasn't the kid who I love school. Yeah. I don't think I would have been in school until I was 25 if I didn't. But it was amazing. Just there was this museum. There was Raymond Alf was, I can't remember if he was, if he was a professor also or just a student and professor, but Dr. Raymond Alf was his name. And he was this paleontology guy. Mm-hmm. And we actually had this museum that by the time I got there was filled with all of these fossils that students had discovered on peccary trips.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so my freshman year was the last year that paleontology was a required class. And of course, everyone's like, oh, this is bullshit. I was like, this is awesome. I loved it. It was so rad. And it's still, I was actually a number of years after we graduated, my best friend from high school and I took her kids to that museum and it was really cool. They're like, yeah, cool. This is where mommy and Zamia went to. Yeah, it was cool. Awesome. But it's awesome. They would do like weekend peccary trips, but also like over the summer, I always wanted to go and we couldn't afford it, but it was like these month peccary trips where you'd go camping and just like digging. And it was cool. For me, it was a great school, not for everybody. Yeah. But the stuff they were doing there. And now when I look at the stuff that's going on, I'm just like, wow, it's a cool school and a small school. Classes are small, a lot of one-on-one attention and just, small classes, which for me as a student is how I did really well. Yeah. Learned a lot about myself as a student going there. Procrastination was the first word I learned, like at the, right. That was like this thing when I was a freshman, like the, whatever it was called before school actually started, learning about that. So, for me, it was great. And a lot of my really good friends, I'm still friends with from there.
Would you say that of the people who went to the Webb School with you, what percentage do you think of those people are successful to this day? Well, I mean, the successful that people like would, money, fame, however you want to define it. It could be
it's hard to say. I only know what I see, and I'm only going to limit that to what I see. Right. But it seems like most people do pretty well who go there. Right. I think a lot of it's because of kind of the work ethic that's instilled. I remember getting to college and kids didn't know how to write an intro paragraph. I'm like, how do you not know how to write an intro paragraph? You graduated high school, supposedly. All these things and time management and that kind of stuff. I was floored. Yep. I was like, why are we spending time on this? Can I just go write my paper? And I don't know where they came from. And I'm not saying it was public or private or anything. I'm like, you should know that. How did you graduate high school and not know what seemed like fundamentals? I feel like a lot of people, again, I only know what people post and share. I don't keep in contact with everybody. I'm sure there are people who are struggling. It's impossible not to have all of it. But I think for those who took being there seriously and chose to get as much out of it as they could, it was a lot of, there's the education part of it itself, but it was the learning about yourself and how to be a successful human being. Yeah. And what to take with you into college and life, and a lot of different experiences and exposures. We had our what are they called? Our own little, not a counselor, but we had a person. I'm totally blanking on what they were called. That was our person the whole time we were there, and we would have meetings and just kind of check in. Do you need help with anything?
Advisor.
Yes, thank you. brain fart.
I was trying to think of it too. I was like, what did you say? I was like, yeah, advisor.
I wasn't a counselor, but yeah. So like we had an advisor. So there was always this support as much as possible to help you finish and get through. As you know, not that it was easy, but to make it as easy for you as possible with the assistance and know that you had assistance and support. Because for some kids, they didn't have it at home necessarily. Right. I was very lucky. I had it at home as well. But for some, it was just at school. And so having those advisors, I think for some kids was really crucial. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can do well anywhere. You cannot. I think it's kind of harder to not do well at a place like that because it's also small and everyone's like, what's going on? I noticed you're struggling. Your grades are dropping. What's going on? Not like, what's your problem? But like, what can we do? What's happening? How can we help you? Yeah. So I think it was harder to just like fail out. And I noticed those differences with some of my friends in different types of schools where that were just bigger and the attention wasn't there. And for some kids, they thrived in that too. They didn't need it. But for certain kids, that wasn't the best situation, unfortunately, for them.
And it seems like I talk to Brendan about it all the time, how like with him, who you hang out with has a direct impact
100%
on what the outcome is going to be. Right. Mm-hmm. And I try to explain that to him. I'm like, listen, like, I know you love video games and I'm not knocking you for liking video games, but understand that this isn't real life.
Right.
Like you're in a virtual reality and you're going to have to go out into the real world and do real shit like at some point in your life. So getting a dub on Fortnite doesn't mean shit in real life. Yeah. And the people that you're associating with, I can assume that they're not the ones that really care about their grades. They're like, I got to see, it's all good. I was like, those are not the people that you want to associate yourself with. And I'm only telling you this because I was one of them, like, fuck school. I was a smart kid, but I didn't need to try that hard in school, like, especially not in grade school. Like I was always one of the top, like I was in GATE and all that other stuff. But as I got older, my attitude kind of sucked and the people I was hanging out with kind of sucked. Right. And it's a direct reflection on kind of what your output is. And I don't want him to fall into that same trap because especially when you know what someone's potential is, it's like, I know what your potential is.
Especially when you're a kid.
Right. And so you're like, come on, man, like hang out with the people that are going to make you better and, or help to make you better. And it's like, I think that's true that like you should never be the smartest person in the room. You should always surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you.
Absolutely. You've got to grow and be challenged for sure.
So how did you get into, you go from being, you have a botanist for a dad and a biologist. What did your mom do?
My mom passed away when I was 4. Oh, wow. So she wasn't really in the picture. Yeah. However, I was very fortunate that a woman stepped into that position, was with my dad for a period of my life and has been in my life ever since. She was at the time actually in graduate school, but an art history professor in movement, dance therapy, kind of created her own PhD at UCLA. So that's kind of that person. She's been in my life ever since, but she also came from a medical background. Her dad was this amazing orthopedic surgeon. So she also had this science component to her, and she's actually gotten really into neuroscience in the last number of years and brain health and everything like that. So I had this really cool dichotomy of art and science, kind of from both of them, especially later. But always, especially like when it came to what I wanted to do and all that kind of stuff. I was drawn to science genuinely, not just, it was never forced on me from what I felt, at least, right. Just exposed. Like I remember going on walks with my dad's and him breaking down the biology and botany of like plants, things like that. And just being fascinated by it. But also loving to dance. Like I danced until I was about 14. And then my ride to ballet graduated, so I was screwed. And that's when I got into sports. Right. But yeah, so I kind of always had a lot of that in my life. I grew up going to art openings and things like that, as well as all the science stuff coming in too. And just liked both of it, was drawn to both of it, and always loved science. Like I was in AP Chem. I don't remember why I didn't go into AP Bio in high school, because that would have been way more interesting than chemistry. But nonetheless, I clearly always liked science as well, genuinely. And so when I got to college, I knew I was going to be a science major. My plan was actually, I went to this small little liberal arts school in Illinois called Lake Forest College, not Wake Forest, which I was like, oh, Wake Forest. I'm like, yeah, no, not that one. Yeah. Which for me, it was a perfect school. Yeah. Small little liberal arts school, small classes.
Sometimes those are the best ones, where the ratio is great.
And again, coming out of the high school, I knew the environment I did well in. And I got into some schools out here that were bigger schools. And I knew I wouldn't do well with hundreds of kids in my class. Right. And so like my biggest class in college was Intro to Bio, which was 60.
Yep.
My senior seminar, which was in biology, because that was my major, was 8. Like I knew how I did well as a student. I did well talking with my professors. I did well in small classes.
Right.
So when I got to college, my plan, they kind of misled me on this. My plan was to major in biology and minor in dance. That was my plan. So did not happen. Once I was debating for my major, I either wanted to go into marine biology or medicine. And it's either way, there's labs involved. So like that's more science classes are in the morning, labs are in the afternoon. There was no way I was getting all these dance classes in as a minor. So I got one in as a senior. So I kind of decided I wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to become a pediatrician. I'd always worked with kids. I look back, I started working with kids when I was 11, which I don't know what those parents were thinking, but I mean, granted, I was a mature 11-year-old. Yeah, like legit babysitting, and this was like a baby. Granted, my dad was next door, but I'm like, I was 11. Your kid was in diapers.
Yeah, but sometimes like I feel like there are certain kids that you can look at that are just more mature for their age.
Yeah, and I on certain levels was one of them. I'm sure on others I wasn't, but when it came to that, and I loved kids and they connect, and I always knew I was good with kids. So all through grade school, I had a family I worked for. In college, I found a family that I worked for, and I was like, I want to be a pediatrician. Healthier kids or happier adults. That was kind of my mindset. So that was my plan. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a pediatrician. So basically I was pre-med. My school was so small, there was no pre-med major. So I majored in biology, minored in chemistry, because by just taking one semester of biochem, I picked up the minor, and I had to take all the other stuff anyway as requirements for medical school. Yeah. So that was my plan. Took the MCAT my junior year. I don't do well on those tests to begin with, and that thing kicked my ass big time. I wasn't ready to take it. I'm a good student, but I'm not the person who does it once and gets it. Like I was always, like in terms of ranking, I was always kind of below the top people, but worked so much more than some of them. Because I have friends that, which was fine. I was slower at getting it all. But I didn't really care because, again, I loved it. So I was like, as long as I'm understanding it and finally getting it, whatever. Long story short, I knew I wouldn't get into medical school right out of college, which actually terrified me. I was like, I don't want to not be in school. Like that freaks me out. Especially if I have to go back to school. Cause I remember thinking back to how hard it was after summer vacation to go back to school. I was like, oh my God, I can't not be in school. What can I do to stay in school and then go to medical school? Again, I love school, thankfully. So that wasn't a gross, thought. I took a physiology class in college. Again, it was a liberal arts school. So I was a biology major. I had breadth within my major, along with history classes, economics, English classes, all sorts of stuff. And I was like, I'll get a physiology master's degree. That's great. It's foundation systems of the body. Perfect, great thing to go into medical school with. So that was my plan. So got into Penn State. About halfway through my master's degree, I always told myself, and this was no pressure from anyone in my family to be a doctor. That totally my decision. It resonated with me. I liked being in hospitals. The sick didn't make me uncomfortable, didn't scare me. Which is probably not surprising knowing me now. I'm like, can I just hug it out of you? So I always told myself though, I'm like, if I'm not 100% for any reason, this isn't happening. It's too much of an investment on every level.
Oh yeah, it takes a full commitment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, financial aside, like the other stuff. Yeah. I already knew I was going to have massive debt. And all of a sudden, I wasn't 100%. And I remember I was just like, shit. I was like, I do not have a backup plan. I was 100% sure this is what I wanted to do. And it wasn't that I didn't want to be a doctor anymore, or a pediatrician. It was more lifestyle at that point. Like I tacked on about 3 years with grad school. Yep. Gotta love research. It doesn't always work. So, and I was like, man, that's pushing me to this age. And then by the time, best case scenario, I get into medical school at this age, I know I'll have a little bit longer because there's a bit of a specialization. And I was like, I mean, I want to do things like in my 20s, especially in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I knew I would butt heads a little bit already with traditional Western medicine because of how I thought about things. I was very holistic already in my approach to how I viewed things in the body and health and wellness. I didn't really have a name for it at the time. Functional medicine wasn't really, to my knowledge, a thing at that point.
Was your dad like part of that because of like being a botanist? Was he like the guy that was like, I don't need an antibiotic, I can take
really.
this plant, that plant, or whatever?
Not really. I think the woman who's in my life as my mom, she was a little more, even though she grew up in a medical family, she was a little more that way.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where some of it came from. And I don't know, maybe it's the sunflower in me. I don't know. Like, you know what? Maybe it's partially my grandma. Even though my grandma took medication, she was the vitamin person. Like she was someone I was really close to. She became a vegetarian and quit smoking cold turkey overnight with both.
Good for her.
I'm not going to say she ate healthy as a vegetarian, but she became vegetarian and quit smoking. And like vitamins came into the picture really quickly. So as a child, I remember her being like the vitamin person, bringing vitamins into the family. Yep. So yeah, I don't really know exactly. I'm sure it was a combination of a little bit of all of it, probably.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know. I mean, it's kind of off topic, but because your dad's a botanist, obviously, like I'm like fascinated by like psilocybin for therapy, as far as like
right
within the veteran community, especially. So I was wondering if he was like into any of those alternative like
not that
methods.
I remember really.
Yeah.
I mean, he went to normal traditional Western doctors. It was probably more MA is her name. I remember because she did acupuncture and worked with that kind of world more, despite the orthopedic background she came from.
Right.
So my guess is probably a little bit more from her, although I don't know. So I knew I would butt heads with traditional Western medicine because I'd be the person who would not want to put someone on a drug if I could help it. Yeah. So just so all of that kind of factored in. I was like, okay, I need a backup plan. And this is a slightly long-winded version of how I got to where I am now. So I was like, hey, I'm going to become a physician's assistant. Yeah. It's California. I knew I wanted to come back home. Grad school, again, I was in Pennsylvania. I was in Illinois for college. So I was like, good. PA school, it's like 2 to 3 years, depending on the program. I can specialize in pediatrics. I don't need to be the head honcho. I'm fine working under somebody, especially because you tend to get more time with patients as a PA these days. Although these days was a long time ago. I feel like I just got out, but it's been 16 or 17 years. So that was my plan. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to come home. I knew I gave myself about 2 years because academically I had everything, but I knew I would need hours of experience with a PA, and I had them with a physician. Yeah. So I was like, okay, in the meantime, I'll do that. And in the meantime, I want to get a job that is somehow related. I don't want to go, not that Starbucks is a bad place to work for at all, actually, but I'm like, I want to work somewhere that makes some sort of sense to medicine. Sure. So they're not like, what the hell was that for 2 years? Yeah. And also just to be around it and whatever. So I ended up actually via my mom, who had just joined Equinox in Pasadena.
Nice. It's on Colorado?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. In the little mall promenade, whatever that place is called. So she had joined. She's like, oh, you should check this place out. And I'm like, because I was thinking it had been tossed around a lot that I should do it. I'd be given my background and whatever. So I was like, okay. So I ended up, long story short, got hired. Was very upfront. I was like, this is not story of my life. This is not what I'm doing with my life. This is what I want to do. I will 100% be committed to it while I'm here, but this is just a 2-year stint while I get myself ready for PA school. Yep. And the guy I was interviewing with actually had a very similar background. He's like, I totally get it. And I didn't have experience. I had academic understanding of the body and just working with the body and being a mover my whole life, blah, that. But I was like, I've never trained anyone. I mean, I kind of have with friends, just whatever, but because who didn't do that, right? Although mine actually was a little more than bro science, thankfully, given the background. I had anatomy and physiology. Right. So long story short, got hired. 2 years came and went. My dad was still alive at the time. He's like, yeah, so what's happening with PA school? I'm like, oh yeah, totally doing it still. I'm totally doing it still. third year came and went. My dad's like, so actually he was probably asking me a little more frequently. Again, not that he cared, but I seemed like I was dragging ass, which I was. Yeah. And I like had a moment with myself and was like, okay, Zamia, what is going on? Are you afraid you're not going to get in? Do you not want to do it? And, and I realized it wasn't so much that, it was more that I loved what I was doing. Huh. And I was seeing people multiple times a week, which is way more impactful if they're open to it, of changing behaviors and changing their lifestyles to help them feel better and be healthier instead of seeing them when they're sick. And again, pediatrics a little bit different, kind of. But I just genuinely loved what I was doing.
It's awesome.
And still thought I was going to go, and kept moving up, moved up relatively quickly as a trainer. Despite them wanting me to be a manager, not what I ever wanted to do. Probably would have gotten fired or quit in like 2 weeks, because I am not a yes person, and I will stick up for people if I feel like they're being taken advantage of. Oh. So thankfully never said yes. And it's just not what I want to do. Like, I like the one-on-one. I didn't want to run a hospital. I wanted to be a doctor. Right. Yep. So, and it was great. Equinox was a great place for me to work. I learned so much being there, was exposed to so much, and fortunate as someone who was at the top of the coaching tier system, had so much great stuff brought to me. So much of what I learned was there, and I sought stuff outside as well. And the longer I was there, the more I was seeking other stuff too, but such a beautiful place for me to grow and learn. And
I've heard great things about that place.
Yeah.
It's amazing. My cousin, her company pays for them to work out there.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, it's like something like $200 a month. She's like, but I literally don't bring anything with me. And they have everything there for me.
And that's the thing. And people are like, awesome. Is it worth the money? I'm like, it depends. What's important to you? Right. Like, if you want a place that's really clean, that provides everything, that has good trainers, that's convenient, that whatever. Yeah, if you don't need any of that and you just need a gym, right? Sorry, Equinox, go somewhere else. Like, anytime then it's probably not worth the money for you. Right. But for a lot of people, it is. And for me, it was a great place. I was really fortunate when I first came in. Ree was one of my managers, and she was the education person, and I was able to shadow her. Like, I wasn't a trainer yet, so they were like, "You can't actually train anybody yet. Here are the 4 certs we accept right now. Whatever's first, get it." So in the meantime, I shadowed and worked with her, and I learned so much just from that. Yeah. For me, it was great.
Are you like a contractor at that point? Like, if you become a trainer?
No, you're always an employee there.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, when you see outside training there, that's not supposed to be happening. All the trainers are employees of the company. Benefits, like, it's a great place.
So you're not allowed to bring in outside clients in there to train?
No, all your clients there are members of the gym. So they also there's a whole process that helps you get clients. Right. You have to obviously do the work on your own as well. But
is it commission based though? Like, to where if you get a bunch of clients, you're getting compensated for that, or is this is your salary and how many clients?
No. You basically can make at the end of the day as much as you want, as much as you're willing to work, and there's bonuses and things like that. Yeah. So, and benefits and all that kind of stuff. So
really cool.
A gym setting is a gym setting no matter where you are. They're always going to have to take a percentage of it. But I found that place for me, especially, to be a great place to do it. And just the quality of the education I was getting, and the education you had to take. Right. Like, they required a certain amount of stuff for you to take within the education of the company, which is great, because for a lot of people didn't come in with academic backgrounds necessarily. So for some people, basic stuff was relatively new to them. And then just exposing themselves to other people they'd never heard of and information that was newer and stuff like that. So it was great for me.
It was all in Pasadena the whole time you were there?
No, I was just there for 4 years. And then Century City opened, which was the only location on the West Coast that offered this new tier 4, which was team training. Yeah. That was the first location. I was promoted to tier. You had to go through a process to get accepted, but I became part of that first team that opened. We launched that program tier 4 out here at Century City. It's a different location than the one now. Right. So I was there for 10 years or so until that club closed. And then I was at our West LA location for the last year. So I was, most of my career there, I was tier 4. It got renamed to tier X.
Right.
But it was team training. So it was cool. So we shared clients, which was great.
Super awesome.
You know, there would be a primary coach who would do the main assessment, design the program, do all of that, but it was all documented. So if my schedule didn't work for all the days you needed, okay, you know, so-and-so is free at that time. Zamia isn't, but you're going to be with that person on that day. It's same program. Everything's communication. We have meetings regularly, all that kind of stuff.
How much extra is that? So you pay like $200 a month to work out there, and then how much were they paying for like a training?
Oh, training is a separate fee at any level. Yeah. I don't even know what the rates are now.
But is it like, would you say like largely for people that are like listening, because people, you know, that are in the fitness world are going to listen to it, that if you're looking for a trainer, would you say like you're going to find a good one in like an Equinox or 24-hour fitness or whatever? Because I can just only speak on my experience. And on my experience, like what I knew at the time was good for me at that time. However, like what I know now and the people that have come into my awareness, it's like that was all shit.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge. I mean, I think you're more likely I'm not going to make absolutes on this. It's a zero regulated industry. Like, you could say your wife could say she's a personal trainer. Your dad could say he's a personal trainer. Anyone can say that. There's no regulation in it. So that's its own issue, especially if someone's independent.
Right.
I think there is a higher standard overall in a place like Equinox, and in a higher end facility. That being said, I think you can get a great trainer anywhere.
Yeah.
I think you can get a bad trainer anywhere.
Because I look at guys like Jeff, and it's like there's no way you'd ever find a trainer like that in a place like Equinox or.
And no reason, like if you're there, like there's no reason to be there either, right? And it took me a while to find. Everyone's like, when are you going to start your own business? When are you kept asking me that, and and I think there's reasons why we stay. There's reasons why we don't. But I think I can come back to that. But I think you get a good one anywhere. But I think you should also do your research.
That's what I was going to ask. How do you vet? Someone from the outside, like because it's not regulated. Because you could look at most people. It's like an outward, like what you see, right? So if I had some fat guy walking in the gym, like, hey, I'm your trainer. It's like I'm not going to listen to you. Just like I probably won't listen to a fat doctor. Not that they don't have knowledge. It's just that's a judgment of mine. So it's like you're going to tell me about how I should be eating when I know you're not eating properly, so it's challenging. And I will say this, you never know someone's story, right? I remember we actually had a new trainer who got hired, who didn't seem as in shape as everybody else. And people were saying stuff. And I was like, listen, guys, I'm like, we don't know his story. For all we know, maybe he just lost 100 pounds and was so inspired by that he wanted to start doing this for a living. Yeah. Turns out that was actually what had just happened. He had lost all of this weight, totally turned his life around. He wasn't where he wanted to be yet, but he's like, I need to do that. Yeah. And like, you never know someone's story. Right. That being said, it's hard because people are going to post, especially nowadays with social media, you're going to post your most successful stuff, right? Totally. Generally speaking, you're not going to post the stuff where like, I think they look a little different. I guess they said their blood works better. I think there's a lot of good questions you can ask that person. How long have they been in the industry? And even if they don't necessarily need an academic degree in it, but what have they done? What have they been doing to be in this industry? Right.
What is there? Do they just start with you off the bat? Like there should be, whether it's training, whether it's nutrition, there should be a lot of questions. There should be a lot of screening. I'm not going to design a program for you. Even when you tell me what you've been doing, I need to know what your medical history is. I need to know what your orthopedic history is. What have you been doing? What are you currently doing? What is your life like? Like there needs to be a lot of screening going on. And I've had a number of friends who have started working with someone both in training and nutrition that under the right circumstances would probably be fine. But I'm like, you didn't have like a questionnaire even that you filled out? Like, they're just designing stuff based on what you're saying you want.
Or you have like a cookie cutter option too, where it's like I did a carb cycle, where I was like carb cycling and I was cutting weight, and it worked fantastically. I was like, oh wow, that works. That's interesting. I don't know what the rebound is on that. And the other thing was like I gave the diet to somebody else to like look it over and say, what do you think of this? And they're like, that's the most cookie cutter generic piece of shit I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, first off, the first thing they pointed out was like, there is like almost zero fat in this diet. And
Yikes.
no fat. He's all, just say goodbye to your testosterone. Like you're just.
And brain health.
Yeah, he's like, you're taxing your testosterone. Like it doesn't make any sense. And he's like, where'd you get this? And so I told him, and he was like, I guarantee you that they gave this to like multiple people because it's probably just like a prep diet or whatever. And it's not a diet specifically made for you.
And I think I will say there are definitely situations where kind of, I'll call it cookie cutter, but not for a bad reason.
Yeah.
Like Train Heroic is a great example. That those programs are designed with intention behind them, but not for you specifically.
Yeah.
That can be great for you.
Yeah.
Same with certain nutrition plans. There can definitely be versions that could work for most people and probably would.
Yeah.
But especially if you're someone who you've got anything going on, whether it's orthopedic or medical, or your life is nuts, and following that it just won't work.
Yep.
It's not worth wasting your time or energy or money on something like that because you're probably not going to have success with it.
It's so hard, right? For people that are not in the industry, for people that are on the outside, like I can speak for myself, and I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but like, for example, like my dad had a quadruple bypass at 61. It was supposed to be a quintuple bypass, but one of the veins or one of the arteries was like so diseased that it was like, we're not going to just leave it.
Right.
No, there wasn't any reason to bypass it. So anyway, he did the quadruple bypass at 61. So I was like, oh wow, like I should probably go get my heart checked, because that's pretty young. And he's he's a thin guy, like he's probably 6'1", very like he doesn't have like big muscles or he's not fat. He's just a tall, skinny guy, right? And so I was like, wow, this must be like genetic. And I didn't really grow up with him, so I didn't really know any of the family history. Right. And so like I asked him, I was like, hey man, like what's the family history? I probably should know that. I got a bunch of kids. I want to make sure that like I'm doing the right things.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of heart issues like on my mom's side of the family, like guys dropping dead like in their 40s, from heart attacks and stuff. I'm
that's
like,
really early.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's not good. So I just went and got checked and had like a stress test done with a nuclear medicine they shoot you up with, and it can kind of see like what your heart's doing and any like blockages and whatnot. And it all came back good. Like everything was good. The only thing that wasn't good was my cholesterol. He's like, oh, your cholesterol is like really high. And he's like, do you eat a lot of meat? And I was like, yeah, I'm a carnivore, dude. Like, of course I do. And so he's like, so part of it is from meat and part of it is just hereditary. So like your liver or whatever will throw out, like you're going to produce a certain amount of cholesterol regardless of what you eat. So I was like, okay.
Well, just so people listening, cholesterol is not a bad thing. You actually need it.
Right.
But obviously, my question to that though too is, and I'm not knocking your doctor, when cholesterol is bad, there are often like the basic things that get looked at initially that we know of, but there are so many more little pieces to that that should then also be looked at to get a better idea of what's really going on.
Yeah, so he looked at the direct LDL and then the total cholesterol number and stuff like that, but he wanted to know what the LDL was. Like that was like a primary focus of his. And he said back in the day, like old science said that if your HDL was high and your LDL was high and your triglycerides were low, you're still okay because your HDL is high and your triglycerides are low. So you're at a low risk of having like cardiovascular disease and this and that. He's like, that's old science though. That doesn't make any sense. We don't know how protective the HDL is. And because your LDL is so high, it was like 160 or whatever. He's like, that's borderline like dangerous. Like you need to, like right now it's okay because you're 30, I'm going to be 38 this year. He's like, so that it's okay now, but you're going to get to a certain point where you may need to be put on statins and this and that and blah. And I was like, listen, challenge accepted. Like I will not be on a statin. That's for sure. And so like I told Kathleen, I was like, I used to have like a regimen that I followed and I didn't really deviate from it much. And I took a certain type of vitamin. I took a certain type of fish oil. I took niacin every single night and I took fiber every night. Like it was like, and I was eating like pretty much like a paleo-esque type diet. I didn't eat bread. I didn't eat tortillas and other flour and what. I just didn't touch it. I would have brown rice occasionally, and that was about it. And so I really stuck to a lot of meat and a lot of like leafy green vegetables. A lot of broccoli. That was like my favorite. And so I'd go and get my numbers checked every year to see where I was, just because I'm anal like that. And
no, which is good. I recommend at least annual full blood panel
for
to
sure.
clients.
So I do it all the time, and my cholesterol was always fantastic. It was like 170, 180, you know, my triglycerides were like 30 or something, and LDL was always below 100. And so I was always good. And then all of a sudden that like stopped, and I was like, well, I got to take some ownership of this. It's not like, okay, yeah, I'm just, you know, bad genetics. It's like, no, you've been being lazy and you've been traveling a lot, and your diet and exercise has not been what it should be. And so get yourself back on track where you know what you were doing before. Get there first, and then do the numbers again in 6 months and see where you are.
Yeah.
See if anything changes.
See how changeable they are. Yeah.
And so it's always, for people on the outside, it's always difficult because you get so much information thrown at you. There's so like, oh, do the paleo, do the keto, do carb cycling, no rice, no carbohydrates whatsoever. Then the other one's saying, no, you can have carbs, but only have rice and only have, it's like, so people on the outside have no fucking clue like what the right way even is, you know what I mean?
Well, and when it comes to nutrition, excuse me. I mean, first of all, if you can't get someone to follow whatever it is, it's not a good plan for them. Then everyone's different. My big thing with nutrition with clients is pay attention. There are many things, but one of them is pay attention to how you feel when you're eating foods. Yes, we know crap foods are bad for you, but a good food can actually be an issue for your system. Not everyone does well with all healthy foods. Eggs, for example, can give people issues. Super healthy food, especially when it's a good quality egg. Not for everybody.
What do you think about the Everly Well? Have you heard of that? So Everly Well is, and I'm not sponsored by them, I'm just throwing it out there. So it's a shameless plug here, but Everly Well has a test that you can do. It's a blood test. You like prick your finger or whatever, and then you send it in, and it's a food sensitivity test. And it comes back and tells you, I mean, it could all be bullshit, who knows? But like, it comes back and tells you like things that your body doesn't respond well to. So for me, nothing really was like, oh, it's off the rails on really anything. The only thing that came back for me that was moderate was sunflower. I was like, no, it's terrible. No, so it was sunflower. But the first thing I thought was like, wow, how many things have sunflower oil in them?
Yeah.
So many things.
And when you start looking at ingredients, and we'll get into some food stuff here, you start realizing sometimes you don't think you're eating things, but you are. I was actually having a conversation somewhat recently with this on the same topic of all the testing that you can do. Yeah. My understanding, and from talking with some colleagues, it doesn't seem to be like a 100% yes, this will be conclusive type of situation. You can do them. And I think more than anything, I mean, the best thing at the end of the day is doing an elimination diet, but most people don't want to do the work with that because it's time consuming and pretty restrictive.
I think I know what that is. But how would you suggest someone? So I did the Whole30, and then that was like doing the Whole30 was a way to like, and then you bring things back into your diet to kind of see how your body responds to it.
Right.
How would you recommend somebody, you don't have to do the Whole30, but like how would you recommend them doing an elimination diet? Yeah.
So elimination diets are generally pulling all of the big kind of allergy issue foods out. So you're basically, obviously all processed foods come out, but gluten, soy, dairy, nuts, seeds, legumes, eggs. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, nightshades. You start pulling out all of these foods we know can be issues. Yep. I can't remember if caffeine was in there. I did one years ago. And so you pull all of that out to see how you feel, first of all. Yep. And then you take, and this is often where mistakes are made, you pick one and have a little bit of it that you reintroduce, and you give yourself a few days because reactions don't always happen right away, and see how you do with it. And another mistake that I find people make just in general when I'm dealing with them with nutrition is even a minor response is an issue. A little bit of bloat is an issue. A little bit of head fog is an issue. A little bit of congestion is an issue. A little bit of gas is an issue. It doesn't have to be this, oh my God, I have diarrhea. Oh my God, I'm keeled over because I'm cramping so badly in my stomach. Yeah, that's obviously, that's bad, but minor is still bad. That's your system not processing and handling whatever it was, which is a bummer sometimes. I've had it happen to me with eggs. Some are correctable if you just pull them out and then reintroduce and then don't have every day. Yeah. Certain things can be brought back well. So that's my experience with elimination diets is you kind of pull out all the stuff. So you're really sticking to good quality protein sources. Certain vegetables are pulled out as well. Broccoli is great, but it can be very gassy for a lot of people. Cruciferous vegetables have that. They're anti-cancer, which is awesome, but they can also be very gassy for a lot of people. So again, healthy foods can have issues. Sometimes cooking them just very slightly can help with that. I have a client who, he was like, just new nutrition client. And he was saying, just on and off kind of loose bowels. And I'm like, whoa, what? I'm like, on and off. He's like, not all the time. I'm like, not ever. I mean, every once in a while is one thing, random stuff happens, but I'm like, this should not be an on and off. I'm like, talk to me more about this. And he was telling me, I'm like, it's when you started having more spinach. Is your spinach cooked or raw? Raw spinach does not go well for a lot of people.
Yep.
And there's even some health conversation about that too. So I was like, okay, first of all, you always need to tell me. We had this very funny poop emoji, bitmoji conversation the other day.
Hilarious.
Yeah. I talk about poop a lot. I've had many poop conversations between all the childcare I've done. I've been pooped on. I've been thrown up on, not by my adult clients, just the kids.
Some people are into it,
whatever. Like poop does not scare me to talk about. But like this, I'm always wanting to know about that situation because that's super telling.
Yeah.
And to him, it didn't seem, he's like, oh, that's just normal with all the fiber. I'm like, first of all, not normal. Secondly, your fiber hasn't increased to the extent where you should be having loose bowels.
Right.
And on and off doesn't make sense either if what you're doing is consistent. Yep. So talked about that and just switching things out. But again, clearly an issue. Something was giving him an issue. It was healthy food, but it was giving him an issue. Yep. So again, elimination diets, no one wants to do it because you have to do it long enough. Generally, you go about a month on the pulling everything out, which... And this is hard because eating out makes that very difficult because any bit of any of that disrupts the system.
I can't even tell. I was telling Ben the other day, we did the Whole30, Kathleen and I. And so it's like clean eating. And it's not a diet plan. It's kind of like a lifestyle that you like to get yourself, I think, a good reset. And we went to Claim Jumper and I ordered a steak at Claim Jumper. I felt like I was being stabbed in the stomach. Like it was, and I'm like a meativore. I love meat like a lot and I eat a lot of it. And so that should have never happened, but I was eating so clean and I did not deviate. I didn't cheat. I mean, everything was to the T.
To your knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
and then I walk in there and it wasn't really even a cheat. It was just like, hey, we had a party to go to, so I'll just be safe here and have broccoli and meat. And it felt terrible.
Who knows how it was prepared, right? You don't know what's prepared
oil,
in.
I don't know any of that. I was like, oh man. But it did make me think like, what are we putting into our bodies? Like obviously if my body had detoxed for what I think it was 30 days. So like I had been detoxed for about a month and then you go and you eat at a fast food or not fast food, but you go to a restaurant and it makes you really wonder like, dude, what are they what are they cooking in? Like what kind of meat is this? Like,
and also just the amount of things. I always tell clients, for me with nutritional clients, it's not about a diet. It's about learning how to develop a healthy relationship with food and find a nutrition plan that works well for you right now. That may change later, partially because of your lifestyle, partially because of what your body handles well. Carbs aren't the devil. We want to find all of those foods that sit well with you, not only energetically, and I don't mean that in a woo-woo way, but like your energy is good, your mental clarity is good, your blood work is good, your hormone panels are good, all of it. You're lifting, hopefully you lift, that goes well, you recover well, you sleep well, your sex drive is good, all of those things are important. The bathroom situation is good. All of that is part of this equation to pay attention to. And when you eat out, I always tell them, like, you're eating out. We know you're eating out. Keep these things in mind. There's always going to be more sodium when you eat out. Salt is not the devil. We need it for life. Right. However, the quality of that salt may not be great, but there's definitely going to be more. There's also going to be way more fat involved in your meal generally. And again, fat is not bad, but we don't know the quality of that fat, but there's always going to be more. That's why it tastes so good. Yep. So paying attention to those things. So even if the quality of everything you ate was okay, it may have just been way more than your system was used to.
Could be.
And it's Claim Jumper, so no offense to them, but I'm going to go with the quality of everything probably wasn't great.
Right.
And it could have just been a total overload and clearly a bunch of different foods than your body had been having.
Yeah, I almost went to the ER that night. I was like, it was that bad. My stomach was so jacked. And I was like, dude, it seriously felt like I was being stabbed. And I was like,
excuse me.
I don't know if this is normal. I think part of the problem for most people like I know like from my dad, even like having his heart attack and then having the quadruple bypass, he didn't even realize how shitty he felt until after the surgery. And so I think that's most people, like they don't realize like that they have brain fog. They don't realize that until they don't have it, they're like, holy shit,
100%.
I could breathe now. This is weird.
Yeah. And that's the thing when you're in that state, that's just, it's your normal. Right. And it also doesn't seem that bad. Yep. You're not in pain and you don't think things are bad. When you shift out of it and are in a better state, having that reflection, you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize. I've been there. Like a number of years ago was helping out a friend of mine with this, I don't like the word cleanse and detox really, but it was this kind of thing she was working on. I was like, I will guinea pig for you. Yeah. And it was an elimination component to it and then some stuff. And I generally am someone who feels pretty good. My body's not extreme about anything for the most part, but I'm like, I have good energy, not in pain, really feel pretty good. Don't feel like I have symptoms of GI issues or that kind of stuff. Right. When I did her thing, I was like, holy shit. I'm like, you need to call this the crack diet. I feel amazing. Right. Like I didn't realize that I was actually always a little bloated.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. So clearly my norm was not what I thought it was. Again, not dramatic. I wasn't like distended stomach, having diarrhea, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, wow, I didn't realize how good I wasn't feeling. Yeah. Right. And so whether it's training, nutrition, whatever, that's why when I work with people, my questionnaire is so extensive. It's a lifestyle thing. We're working on your lifestyle, and nutrition and training are part of that, but we're dealing with sleep. We're dealing with stress. We're dealing with travel. We're dealing with home life. We're dealing with work life because all of it factors in to you right now. Right. And I can have the best training program. I can have the best nutrition plan, but if we can't make it happen, it's not the best plan for you right now.
Yeah.
And when people start, and this is the biggest motivator, but often takes a little bit of time, although cleaning up a diet quickly can actually have some pretty quick, noticeable changes in terms of how you feel. But that's such a great motivator to be in less pain and just physically start to feel better. Totally. And realize, oh my God, my energy, it's not because of this, and this. I didn't realize the things I was eating, So when just like a very general guideline to nutrition, I am not saying anything that's new. Eat more whole foods, eat more real foods. The less processed stuff, the better. Your peanut butter shouldn't have a paragraph long list of ingredients. Yeah. There's no need for anything more than the nut, whatever nut butter it is, and maybe some salt. If you're someone who is transitioning, and I had this conversation with someone recently about that, because he's trying to have a more natural peanut butter, not like a Skippy with who knows what chemicals are in there, not to mention a bunch of sugar. Yeah. He was like, I just started putting honey in it. I'm like, okay, how much honey? He's like, a lot. I'm like, okay, honey is still better. And it was a good quality honey. So I'm like, next time you do it, put in a third less honey.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with that. And then a third less honey. So then you're at a point where the amount of honey is not like some crazy amount, Yeah. And again, you have to do what works for you, and you have to meet yourself where you are right now.
And kind of be in tune with it, right? Because like
absolutely.
I know for like me, like I had the a sad realization the other day that honey was causing me migraines. So you get those weird like triggers, and I love honey.
And like I said, a healthy food can be an issue, right. Which is a bummer.
And I think it was just that particular honey. Like I bought it at the farmer's market. It was just wild, like unprocessed, unpasteurized, whatever honey. And I was like, totally wildflower. Let's do it's local. And I kept getting these like gnarly like migraines on the side of my head, and I was like, man, what is going on? And like me being a dude and like a fixer, like I need to fix this. I don't know what's wrong. But am I drinking enough water? Which I usually don't, which is terrible.
Most people don't.
I need to get on it. So I was like, okay, I'll increase my like water intake. Maybe that'll help. And then I was like, okay, that's not working. All right, maybe it's a probiotic. Maybe it's like, who knows what, right? Because I try at all costs to avoid an NSAID. I don't want to take Advil. And so I started doing the elimination. Like, okay, I'm gonna take this out. Okay, I'm gonna take all my supplements out. I'm not gonna take any supplements to see if that's what's causing it.
Which then gets hard because if it fixes it, you don't know which one it was.
Yep. And so finally, I got to it, like where I figured it. I was like, it's the honey. Damn it! I was so
and maybe hopefully it's just that particular.
I think it is
honey.
Because I've had honey forever. Like my thing used to be like the apple cider vinegar in the morning with honey. I did it every single morning and it made me feel amazing. I didn't even drink coffee and I had all the energy in the world. I'd go hike 7 miles, no problem. Like I was good to go. I didn't need coffee to get me going. And my alarm went off and I was up. Actually takes a sip of her coffee.
Which sadly doesn't do anything for me. I just like it. Chased by my water.
I really think it was, I think it was the honey for sure. But it was that particular honey because I've had honey forever. And Brendan was so excited because like he loves honey too. And so he's like, I'm always giving him shit because I'm like, dude, I buy this honey and like I'll come in here into the kitchen to get some and like a lot of times it's gone or like almost like half of the jar is gone. I was like, what are you doing? Like coming in here like a little mouse at night to like eat it? Oh, totally. Well, it's the one you have to scoop because I use
that's how my Manuka honey is.
Yeah, for sure. It's the
more of a jar.
Eco something. I get it at Whole Foods. I don't know. Anyway, but he's always eating it also. I'm like, dude, stop eating my honey. I'll get you different honey, okay? Stop eating my honey. But now like I can't eat that one, so it's all his. He can have it. So he's pumped.
Yeah, it's tough though. You have to really listen to your body. Yeah. And my thing too, especially on the nutrition end of things with clients, is it's hard. I'm never going to judge. My job is to always try to understand you as much as possible and understand the situation as much as possible. But I also ask that of my clients. It's really easy to tell yourself, I fucked up, I'm a piece of shit. Okay, first of all, that doesn't help. You just feel bad about yourself, feel badly about yourself, and tend to often go down that path more. Like try to understand your whys. Why did that not go well, right? And if you ate something, pay attention to how you feel, but also why did you choose that food if it wasn't something that was part of what we're trying to do? And the more you can start to understand yourself and be kind to yourself and understand yourself, the more likely you're going to be successful with whatever it is you're trying to do. And it's hard.
It's a great topic. I actually just had this conversation with somebody the other day, and it was in relation to like my anxiety. And I was sharing a story with him, and I was like, like I came clean of all my drugs, and like I quit it all cold turkey, and I was going through this phase where I was like, my anxiety was like off the fucking charts. Like I could not manage it. I was trying my best, like mentally, to just get through it. And like mindset is everything. And I'm all about that like mantra. And I say it to myself daily.
Right.
And
not always that easy.
And I felt like, for lack of, I felt like a pussy, so I took an anti-anxiety pill and I was killing myself over it. Like, I can't believe I crumbled and took a pill, Jesus Christ. And I'm like losing my mind over it. And he's like, stop being such an asshole to yourself. You need to relax. You know what I mean? Like it's not the end of the world, number one. And number two, like be kind to yourself. Like, and it really is a problem with a lot of people. Like the more people you talk to about diet, right? It's like you go on this diet and then you cheat because you have call it a moment of weakness, if you will, or you just felt like having a cheeseburger. You felt like doing whatever it was. And then you do it. And so what happens, like, I'm off the wagon. Fuck it. I'll just completely sabotage this. I'm not going to get back on. I already cheated. It's done. It's over. And then you get back into that cycle of yo-yoing where it's like, okay, I'm on, I'm off. So we have a magnet in our house and it's kind of funny. It says the diet starts Monday. And it's so true for so many people. Kathleen and I are completely guilty of it, where it's like, we have people over, we have birthday parties to go to. And it's just hard. Like you don't want to feel like a pretentious dick when you go somewhere. It's like, oh, I don't eat that. Oh, I eat clean. I don't eat that. So it's like, you want to be polite and be like, yeah.
Absolutely.
So it creates kind of this weird internal dialogue, So it's like, okay, diet starts Monday. We'll have that piece of cake, but diet starts Monday.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And that's like for me with nutrition clients, my goal is you shouldn't feel like you're on a diet, right? If you feel like you're on a diet, that also means there's an end to it.
Correct.
This is a nutrition plan. We're trying to find a way for you to eat that works well for you across the board, including not feeling like you're on a diet, not feeling like you have to, and I don't actually like this word cheat, but maybe eat something that isn't part of the main plan.
Yep.
And there's so much around why we lean towards certain foods, and they're not always bad. It's not always because you're depressed or because you're sad. Sometimes it's, wow, when I was a kid, we would sit around family. This was always dessert. So there's this great emotion and memory attached to, to this pound cake, whatever. Yeah. We get so critical about it and judgmental, and everyone does different things around food. And the more you can understand your whys and find what works well for you right now, that should be the kind of the food you're eating. Like I'll have someone, I'm like, I don't 180 their meal plan when I get an idea of what they're eating. We'll switch little things, but you also want to start, which is what I do. And if you're listening and do this on your own, start with the easiest thing for you to be successful at changing. Yeah. And maybe that's just, okay, I'm going to have turkey bacon instead of this normal bacon that I know is not a good quality bacon.
Yep.
Or maybe I'm having 2 pieces of bacon instead of 3 pieces of bacon. And that's the only thing I'm changing right now. Or maybe I'm going to turn these berries into organic berries. Not everything needs to be organic. I do believe certain things should be. I do believe berries are one of them. So maybe it's just, I'm going to buy a water bottle and start working at trying to drink that throughout the day. Yeah. You have to find what you're going to be most successful at doing. And when I mean most successful, I mean, what are you 95% confident you will succeed at doing right now? That's what you start with. Not what you think you can do. Not like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm like, no, that's not 95% confident. And right now, if it's just, I'm just going to go grocery shopping twice a week, so I'm never without at least food in the house. Cool. Even if it's crap.
Yep.
Cool. Right? So hopefully it's not, but, so I think a lot of times when it comes to nutrition, people feel that what has to change is so overwhelming and so strict and regimented, and it's everything and it all has to happen right away, that they're so overwhelmed they do nothing. Yeah. And I've more than once I've had clients who are like, oh, I'm like, I'm not trying to revamp your entire nutrition plan. They're like, well, what do you eat? I'm like, what I eat's irrelevant because my life isn't your life. My body isn't your body. Yeah. We want to find what you do well with and what works well in your life. You have 3 kids. You both work. Like, I'm single. I don't have children. Yeah. I am only responsible for myself. My time is very different, right? Yeah. So we need to find what works for you right now. So whether you choose to hire somebody, which is why I also started doing online stuff, so I could do this more with people that just I wasn't face-to-face with, because I really like helping people realize nutrition doesn't have to be this regimented thing. And maybe you're paleo, maybe you're keto, maybe it's Mediterranean diet. If you're a vegetarian or vegan, that's cool. Know that to do it properly, it's going to be more work, but I'm not going to tell you can't be. But we have to find that version that you do well with it. But I'm also very upfront with people in a nice way. So expectations are set. This is work. I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but my goal is to make it as simple for you as possible so you're successful with it.
What do you think about the meal prep plans? Like, I know Jeff talks about the vertical diet a lot. And do you think that that's for somebody who's trying to just start something?
There is nothing wrong with meal prep plans. If it's the type of food that works well for you, absolutely 100% do it. For a lot of people, dealing with cooking the food is the issue. I've definitely had clients where I was like, one of my questions in my questionnaire is, do you plan on doing meal prep? Yep. And no is the answer sometimes. Sometimes my clients have their own cook or chef, and I'm like, awesome, this is what they're doing. Lucky. But that's not everyone. And I'm like, are you open to a meal service? And they're like, yes. I'm like, cool. So we will find the one that will accommodate what I think will be best for them based on what we've talked about. And I'm like, these are the guidelines that we want to try to stick with. It can be harder sometimes with meal plans, but even if we can find something kind of close, cool. If it gets you eating consistently pretty close to what we want it to look like, awesome. If that works for you, sweet. I don't need you cooking any of your meals. We just want to find the quality of food, if we can, in your budget that works well.
Yeah, eating healthy it can be kind of difficult, as far as financially, it's more expensive to eat organic and stuff like that, which is unfortunate. I mean, you can buy a $1 cheeseburger, but it's $5.
That's what's frightening, right?
You can buy a $5
Crap
salad.
Is cheap.
It's like, it sucks.
Yeah, and again, not all things have to be organic, and I think you do the best with what you have the ability to work with. Yeah. I do think certain things, maybe we just don't eat them if you can't. If it's really important for them to be a certain quality and you can't afford it. Yeah. I think variety is important too. All food has different nutrient value to it. But I have no problem with meal plans. We want them to be decent ones. Yeah. If that is what helps someone be consistent and do what we're trying to do, awesome.
Yeah.
No problem with that.
What's a diet that you'd say, like, I mean, there's definitely not a one size fits all approach, but if there was like a specific, not diet, but lifestyle, if you will, that you would recommend for someone that's someone that's searching, like, man, I feel like shit, I'm trying to lose some weight. Like, what direction would you lead them in?
I mean, it's just so hard to answer that. Generally speaking, I will say, assuming you eat animal protein, good quality, especially if we'll say fat loss, because it's usually not weight necessarily, but fat that we want to lose. If you can get decent quality lean meats, and I'm not saying that whatever it is. And we'll throw poultry into that with protein sources. Poultries, fish, again, some of these can get a little sketchy. Our oceans are not so great these days. Farmed fish are not always healthy. I won't get into that conversation, but if you can get good quality protein sources, if you can get lots of variety in your veggies, healthy fats, avocados, nuts and seeds, definitely a fat over a protein. They do have both, but they have more fat than protein. Olive oil, olives, coconut, everything. Those are the good fats. Please don't have canola oil. Sorry, Whole Foods, please stop cooking with that. So if you just start having more of that, I'm not even going to say stop eating other things. If you just start having more of those, carbohydrates are not bad. Veggies, good source of carbohydrates. I don't even count those as carbohydrates with clients. I'm like, I don't need you if it's someone who I'm logging, which I don't do with most people. Veggies are free foods as far as I'm concerned. Not any fats that are being cooked in. That has to be kind of counted for. But veggies are fine. Fruits are going to be a carbohydrate source, totally fine. Sweet potatoes, regular potatoes. Some people do well with rice. I don't have a problem with that if you do well with that.
Right.
And then, so if you're kind of sticking to good fats, good proteins, good carbohydrate sources for the most part, or just more than whatever you're doing now, and then paying attention to serving sizes. So, and just very basic guidelines for a male, 2 of your palms is considered a good serving size. This is generally speaking. If you're trying to gain, things are a little bit different.
Right.
But 2 of your palms is considered a serving size for a protein source. 2 of your thumbs, again, this is for males, 2 of your thumbs is a fat source. Think of how many nuts you eat at a time.
Yeah.
Your thumbs, that's not a lot, right? Because they're so packed. They're packed with good stuff, but it's a lot.
Yep.
So if you're doing, I just use a little bit of olive oil. If you measure it out, see what it actually amounts to, right? 2 of your thumbs if you're male. And then carbohydrates, 2 cupped hands. That's not a lot. Again, if there's hard training, there's a little difference, but generally speaking, loose guidelines for females, 1 palm, 1 thumb, 1 hand. If you just start eating a little more of that, put a lot of veggies on your plate, some good protein sources, smaller serving of carbs compared to the other stuff, and see how you feel as well. Some people do better with higher fats. Some people do better with less fats. But generally speaking, the more whole foods, the more real foods, the less processed. More water, less sodas, less energy drinks. They tend to be filled with a bunch of stuff. Water is a thing where it's more of a behavior. Get in the habit of nursing as we both go for sips of water, right? And I'm definitely a support the planet person. So get yourself, for many reasons, a reusable water bottle of some sort and just start telling yourself, okay, I'm going to work towards trying to get through one of these in the day. And don't beat yourself up when you don't, but see how you're most successful with it. Just think of, I tell clients, I'm like, it's not about feeling like you need to take a drink. It's just about almost mindlessly nursing it. Drink here, drink there, it adds up.
That's
a big swig here, a big swig there, it adds up.
Yeah, Kathleen, we have the Hydro Flask, and I need to start doing that because this was for Brendan, this little plastic bottle I have here was for Brendan's football games and whatnot. But I was telling Ben on the way over here, I was like, I'm trying to do little things, leave a better impact on the planet. I'm just one person, but so one of the things I do is I don't buy bottled soap anymore. So I go to Whole Foods and I'll buy home handmade soap. Mm-hmm. It's that's the soap I use because it doesn't come in a container. It's not, it's me. I'm supporting someone else's small business.
Right.
That just makes me feel like a better human.
Yeah.
So it's just one little small change.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, just like with a nutrition plan, don't feel like you have to revamp everything at one time. Find what you will be successful with doing right now and start there. And once you've kind of locked that in, pick another one, whether it's nutrition, whether it's environmental stuff, same thing,
So I want to go into the MPS stuff.
Yeah.
That we do. We talked about it a little briefly in the beginning of the podcast. It helped me tremendously. Like, I know that there's something to it. I don't know what, but like there's something.
Yeah.
Voodoo, whatever. But
there does tend to be a feel of magic to it. And I'm okay with that. Yeah. But there is science behind it. How did you
get into it? What is it? And how can people find it?
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. It's actually been around now for probably 30 or so years, though still very unknown globally. I was at a conference in Toronto. It's called Swiss that I go to. Now it's every other year, I think, that they do it. And I will never for the life of me remember what it stands for, but it's like exercise, athletics, nutrition, sleep, hormones, like anything and everything remotely related to any of that. And the first year I went, it was 3 or 4 years ago. The first room I went into, it's basically 4 conference rooms, and every hour there's a different speaker or presenter talking about whatever. And the first one I went into was, I think the name was Scar Release for Pain Therapy or something like that. My colleagues and I all went together, and we were all like, yep, like all of our clients have pain and everyone's got scars generally in some capacity. So we're like, let's go check that out. And we'd never heard of it. Yeah. So we all went in there and they did some scar release and showed the range of motion stuff. And you're one of those things where you're like, it's kind of okay, it's kind of whatever. Right. But then they start talking the science around what they're doing and what's changing. And they've, thankfully, because we know how things work, if something isn't published, not to say all publications are very good, but we like to see publications and research to have some validation. And obviously the stuff gets done before the research gets published and everything. That's how it works. Someone's got to try it and figure it out and question it. But thankfully, they've also now got a fair amount of publications out so people can get a better sense of specifically what it is. But we were just like, all of us ended up leaving and buying units. And we're like, this is something very easy to do. The device is itself. Dolphin NeuroStim is the name of the device. Technically, it's a TENS unit. Mainly just because it administers an electrical current, but it's very different from what you think of. It's not a pad that gets put on. And unlike most, not all, but most TENS units are AC currents, which is an alternating current. Yeah. And if you think about how they speak to the nervous system, those are more of like a scream to your nervous system, your muscles contracting. It can be a very intense effect. This is a DC current, a direct current, and it's a very, very low-grade microcurrent, a little more like the natural current of our system, our bodies. So it's more like a whisper to the nervous system. It's very much about upregulating our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our healing, repair, and recovery, and downregulating our sympathetic, which is our fight or flight, which nowadays is where we all tend to live, unfortunately. Not to mention, first responders, military, parents, it's like, or anyone, even just a person who has high anxiety, like your system just isn't quieting down. So it really is about that part of our nervous system, not to say other things aren't, but that's what this focuses on. And so the big umbrella of what it addresses is pain, but what it has the ability to influence is pretty great. And part of it functions when you're doing specific protocols. Like, for instance, when I was doing scar release, which is, as I mentioned, a pretty awesome different way to address scar tissue, it's about restoring polarity to that tissue, which the first release tends to be kind of the most noticeable, biggest bang for your buck. Yep. But I want to say it's like 7 releases for it to completely repolarize. I don't remember exactly. But basically getting that tissue on a cellular level to function more normally. It's never going to be gone, but it's less rigid. Stuff can actually flow through that tissue. It's less blocked. It's less of a wall that's up, which is why after the first time, people are like, ooh, it literally can feel softer.
Yeah, my stomach, I can tell the difference.
Yeah, like it can start to be less raised. It doesn't feel as hard. And even just the pull, like when you move around, you're like, ooh, there's less pull. I can stretch further, or I don't feel pulling in the same way I used to, because it's starting to become healthier tissue again, basically. Yeah. So there's that version of what it does. But when I'll do something like low back pain, there's protocols for a lot of things. And those protocols function off of acupuncture points. So it pulls acupuncture, not all the points. I did not go to acupuncture school. I have my booklet, so that I follow booklets. I do, however, take all of the courses that they offer because this is part of my business and I want to do this the best I can. Really? I had someone, they're like, oh, should I stop seeing my acupuncturist? And I was like, no, not at all. I'm like, though we implement some of their points, I'm like, this is not the same as acupuncture. The way they operate is different. Their training is completely different. They will have so much knowledge I don't have. Please also see them.
No, that never really worked for me. And it's one of those weird things where like, people swear by it, and then there's other people that are like, you know. I was one of those guys where like I mean, as you know, like I have a lot of pain, and it's like I've just learned to live with it, you know, like a lot of times. And so I was like, I'll try acupuncture because I'm just trying to avoid like the opiates. I'm trying to avoid like pain pills and like going down that road again. So I'll do whatever it takes to like do something holistically.
Right.
And I was trying the acupuncture, and it just it's funny, like there's these spots in my hands.
Oh yeah, these are common ones.
And so I put them here, and it fucking hurts so bad. And I was like, why does that hurt so bad? And he's like, because this is where you hold all the tension in your body. So if it hurts really bad, chances are like you're just a really tense like person, or your anxiety. And I was like, okay, so like what are we gonna do here? You know, because every time you do it, it was like an achy, like gnarly pain. I didn't like it.
Well, and painful points, same with when I'm on a point that's really painful. Yeah. Generally, that is a problematic point. A lot of points can be connected to specific organs. Yeah. But generally, that's when, you know, they'll reference it as blocked chi, which sounds woo-woo, but chi is basically blood flow circulation. Right. So something is congested, something is not flowing the way it should. Yep. Perfect example of this, I was treating someone for low back pain, and I was on a point on the toe, which is actually a stomach point. Yeah. And he was like, that is by far the most painful point you've been on so far. And I was like, okay. I'm like, how's your digestive system? He was a younger kid. He was an athlete. He was like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, how often are you pooping? You know, I'm like, you don't need to be embarrassed. I know, you know, whatever. Yeah. He was like, oh, it's okay. It's not great. I'm like, okay, well, this is a stomach point. Don't be surprised if you maybe have actually a pretty good bowel movement. You have a good poop. I'm like, I'm not saying you're going to like shit your pants. It's not like, oh my God, we've opened the floodgates. But I'm like, don't be surprised if this got things moving, because you were able to handle this point, even though it was really painful. Turned out, I found out from one of his teammates the next day when I was treating that person, he ended up having like this massive, really good full poop, like 2 hours later. Yeah. And when you think about it, back pain, your stomach, digestion, why, you know, and that's why people like, you know, it's my back that hurts. I'm like, things are more connected than you realize. Acupuncture has been around forever. I will say this to any type of work you get done, or medicine for that matter, you also have to find a good practitioner that's good for you. Yeah. Like, it's like massage therapy, you know, like I can love someone and they can be great for me, but maybe they don't work well for you. Yeah, right. So
that's totally true.
A therapist, same thing. Like, you just have to find the person that you work well with and that connects to you well with. Same with acupuncture. Same with what I do. Like, I'm sure there's someone you're like, I'm just not jiving with her for some reason. That's cool. Try this person. I know they also do it. Yeah. So with acupuncture, it's not a one-off. And I think that's the challenge with anything. I'm not even going to say holistic, but nutrition, exercise, popping medication, generally speaking, is a pretty instant response.
Totally.
I'm not going to say fix, but response, right? And so when you're used to that, anything other than that can make you feel like it doesn't work. And being in a day and age where we're so instant gratification, I want it yesterday, right? You've got to give it time. And often with acupuncture, and even this, like I can treat someone, you do tend to notice stuff in the moment, but I always say, I'm like, stuff can regress, Rarely does it ever regress to where it was before we started. But depending on what's going on, it may need a number of rounds.
Yeah.
Certain things may need treatment forever. But hopefully I don't see you forever. Hopefully we get this to a point. And that's where I do this, but given my training background and my nutrition background, I can bring those into conversation too. So if someone's like, I can address the other end of things and be like, are you open to doing any homework? If I give you one movement to do a day, would you do it? If you're open to adding one thing to your nutrition, are you open to doing it? And if they're not, that's cool. But I can at least have that conversation and they've started thinking about it. Yeah. Because a lot of times you just want to go to someone and have them fix it.
Yeah, I think that, like for guys, like I can speak for, like I said, again, for myself. And it's like when you and I worked together, there was an instant like change. There was an instant shift in how I felt. And so I was like, oh, that there was relief there. There's also an understanding for me is like, I've been in pain for a long fucking time.
Right.
I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being in pain. So the last thing I want to do is go to acupuncture and be in more pain.
Right.
It's like you're putting these needles in me and it's supposed to be like, it's supposed to help me like feel a little bit better after a while. So I'll tolerate it. I'll go. And like you said, it's not an instant gratification thing. It's more of I'm just tired of being in pain. Like I don't want to be in pain anymore. So like you go, I kept going and going and going like every week to this guy. And like, it's not a knock on him at all. It was just, I didn't feel that the benefits didn't outweigh the cost for me. I was like, I don't want to be in any more pain. So I'm just going to chill on this for a second. The cupping on the other hand was tremendous for me. Like I felt a tremendous relief from that. Cause like a lot of my pain is centered in my back, in my middle back now.
Right.
And so like cupping that and getting some of that to break up for me was like,
and bringing blood flow back to it. That's what cupping does too. Yeah.
I was like, I can bend better. I'm like, it's good to go. So I definitely got some relief there, but the acupuncture I just didn't feel was like.
And maybe now, like if you tried acupuncture, maybe the response would be different.
Maybe.
Maybe not. But I think with all of it, especially when you're trying to find things that aren't a pill, there has to be consistency with whatever it is you're doing, whether it's nutrition, whether it's training. You have to, and I say this to clients, I'm like, if I'm working with someone, you have to give us enough time together of things going the way they're supposed to. Like we can be working together for 3 months, but if you're only half doing what the plan is, that's not fair for either of us. Like don't beat yourself up. Don't think it's me necessarily, but we have to revamp this and find what you can be consistent with. So when you're getting body work or whatever it is, consistency has to be there too.
Totally.
But I think what's cool about NPS is there usually is a noticeable change on some level.
For sure.
In the moment. And again, things can regress. But I've had one-offs. Like I had the second most gnarly Achilles tendon scar I've seen on someone whose surgery was 2011. I treated them last year for the first time, which is the first time I saw them, and only once. He'd been in pain ever since the surgery, had a limp, totally limited, not surprising range of motion around his ankle, which obviously feeds up the chain into everything being an issue.
Yep.
Treated it once, did one scar release. He's been pain-free there ever since. Yeah. I've since been able to treat him one more time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Range of motion opened up a lot. It's maintained. Mobility as a result obviously opened up. And that was like a one-off. I mean, I told him, I'm like, I need to treat you more because this is definitely not where it needs to be. But the fact that you're pain-free is awesome. Like that was definitely like that. I wish it always worked that well every time. And that substantially every time. But
when you see the difference, like for me, it's worth the uncomfortableness of it, So like when I was doing the NPS with you, like it felt at certain points where I was like, man, it feels like hot needles like going into my body, and I can tolerate a lot of pain. So I was like, I can tolerate it, if it's going to make me feel better at the end, like I'm going to go ahead and go for it. And that was the thing why I decided like, okay, acupuncture needs to be shelved for a while because like I didn't feel like a lot of people are like, dude, acupuncture doesn't hurt at all. They barely like put the needles in you. I was like, dude, I don't know what it was. Like certain parts of my body, especially in my lower back, he would put the needles in and it was like sending an electrical shock down my legs. I was like, nah, dude, I'm good. And I've dealt with this my entire life, man. Or not my entire life, but like most of my adult life has been dealing with that pain. The last thing I want to do is exacerbate that.
Right. And someone may have just because it wasn't painful for them doesn't mean it won't be painful for you. Right.
Yep.
And And even when I'm treating someone, you know, I don't like to scare people, but I'll give them all of these feelings are normal.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, it feels like I'm shoving a searing hot needle into you.
Yeah, there are certain
but there are points where it feels like that. And at the same time, I can literally dial down the units because I'm like, I also don't want you sitting through excruciating pain just because you can. Because now your nervous system is like, holy shit, which we're trying to get you out of that, right?
Yep.
So if you can tolerate it and it's not too bad, fine, I'll dial it down a little bit. I don't want you stiff, toughing it out just because you can when it's that bad.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, so it's been such a good add to my practice because it's let me do things that I couldn't do. And I even had a client who was just physiologically or anatomically wound tightly. Some people are wound more tightly, some people are not. That's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. Although if I had to choose, obviously from a physical standpoint, I would choose to be wound tightly because you're more stable. When you're hypermobile, you're way more likely to dislocate and stuff like that. Yeah. And he was just tight. He was always really tight in combination with having a desk job. So before we trained, he wasn't in pain necessarily, but before we trained, I would just do standard protocol even before any warm up because his posterior chain or his backside would just open up and he'd be more mobile. So we take advantage of that window in our training session stuff, especially if we had squats where we would just get better depth because we open things up from the beginning. Then we do movement prep, then we'd start training. So there's so many different things I can use it for. I hit myself on what's called the golden triangle, which can help for sleep before I went to bed last night.
That's awesome.
So there's just so many things. And one of my other favorite things that I'm so glad I finally took the course for is concussion work, because there's so much out there, whether it's from sports, military stuff, whatever. And just because you haven't been diagnosed clinically with a concussion doesn't mean you haven't had one.
Oh yeah.
There's varying degrees of those, of your head, your brain being traumatized.
I think it's a new thing, right? Because when I was talking to somebody about it the other day, where playing football, I was talking to one of my best friends. We played football growing up together, and there was a practice or whatever, and we were doing a play or whatever. And I was the linebacker, he was on the line, and I hit him really, really hard. And the coach kept calling the same play. So it was a blitz, and I kept blitzing and kept hitting him. And after practice, he takes his helmet off, and he asked somebody, "Hey man, can you grab my helmet? You just take my helmet in." And his eyes were all watery and shit. And I was looking, I was like, "Tony, you okay?" And he was like, "No, man, I can't see. I can't see anything, And I'm like, "Are you serious? Are you gonna be all right?" So we go back into the locker room because it was the end of practice. We go into the locker room. I'm on my side of the locker, and he's on the other side. And all of a sudden, I hear this thud, and he's on the ground shaking like a fish. And so obviously the ambulance come. They take him to the hospital. This was on a Wednesday night practice, and he's in the game on Friday. He's playing. So I don't think it was a malicious thing. I don't think it was
they know what their standards are for, right?
And so both of us look back on those times and we're like, there is no way in hell that he should have been playing. There's plenty of times where I'm seeing white lights, everything's going bright. I'm like, boom, and all the lights go off and you're like, wow. And you're back in the next play. And it's they just didn't know. I think it was just an ignorance.
A lot of
Nobody
it.
knew.
There's definitely a lot of that. And I think sometimes it's there's definitely a brushing things aside, but a lot of it is not knowing. And game day is one thing. Right. It's all the practices.
Oh yeah.
That it's the same thing with running. It's the marathon is one thing, but all the miles you have to put in to be ready for the marathon is generally where the issues come from. And I've just finally started being able to do some concussion work on people, and it's really cool. So they view concussions as scarring on the brain. Yep. So you have a lot of cranial sutures, all of those places that hold the plates of our skull together. And it's cool because we just start treating all of those cranial sutures. So we're basically doing all the scar release on the brain. And then there's other acupuncture points that get put in as well. But even just from that, I had a friend who I fortunately was able to bring out here and treated him a couple of days in a row for concussion stuff, pretty bad TBI. And after the first treatment, he sat up and I was like, do you notice anything? I don't want to feed the witness or lead the witness. Right. I was like, do you notice anything in any direction? Sometimes you can feel worse. That's the thing with any sort of body work. Yeah. sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. And he was like, I feel like clearer in my head. And I was like, awesome. That's great. And he's slept really well every night. About 8 to 10 hours of like good sleep, which was not his norm at all. And these were pretty extensive treatments. And generally speaking, with this device, because it's so parasympathetic upregulating, if I do enough, people tend to get super relaxed and often will sleep well anyway, even if I'm not doing concussion work, just because of the part of our nervous system we're tapping into. And he normally has a headache or migraine every other day, if not every day. And so we started Thursday. He didn't get his first headache again. And I told him, I'm like, you're going to get a headache. If you don't, I will be shocked. But hopefully it's not as soon as you normally do.
Yep.
And he went about 4 or 5 days before he actually got another headache.
That's
so
awesome.
We clearly changed something.
Yep.
I've been able to treat him once since then. I do want to keep treating him as much as I can. He doesn't live here. So when our paths can meet, but we know it helps change the tissue and helps bring good blood flow back to the brain.
Yeah.
And there's so many other things that can be helpful for the brain, but I love that this is an option and it's not invasive. It's not painful. Again, points can be painful. I'll come off if it's too painful, I'll stop.
Yeah.
I can go right next to it. When I'm doing the head, it's not acupuncture points. So, I may cross over one, but it's not intentionally on acupuncture points. So I just love this being part of something I can help with now, especially because I do pro bono work for active military veterans and first responders. And obviously a lot of that population, especially the military folks, there tends to be a lot of concussion in there. Sadly, nature of the beast.
Yep.
So having another tool in the toolbox to help them is awesome. And if I can help, I want to. And so it was great with him just seeing, I'm like, okay, we shifted something, right? We were able to change it, which even though it can be frustrating when stuff comes back, we changed it. So we know it's changeable.
Yeah.
Not that I'll ever probably be able to make his go away, but if we can just improve it consistently, awesome.
What's the best way for people to connect with you? Like if someone wants to do the treatment, if someone wants to, for you to write them a nutrition plan, for you to do a workout plan with them, what's the best way for someone to connect with you? Yeah.
So Instagram at the moment, I don't have a website up. Finally did a photo shoot. So eventually hopefully not too, that was kind of fun, but weird at the same time. But I'm
always weird in front of the camera too.
It's funny. I grew up in front of one because my dad was a photographer also,
right.
But that's different. Like when it's all,
I have this camera. I think it's in my backpack right there. And I just bought it to just start doing vlogging because I was like, I'm doing the, I'm totally stealing your thunder right now.
No worries.
I apologize.
I'll steal it back.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And so I bought this camera to do the vlogging and I'm still like putting it off because like I feel so awkward in front of a camera. Like I can't stand it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get over that like irrational like fear of it.
Do it solo without anything you're posting just so you can get comfortable.
Yeah.
Thankfully this photographer is great. I was training someone who was a client.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like fake stuff.
You're in your comfort zone too.
Yeah. So, but long story short, I will have a website up in the near future. But in the meantime, Instagram's probably the best. Good Human Fitness is my business name. goodhumanfitness@gmail.com, or you can DM me through Instagram. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I do have a Facebook page linked to that.
Right.
So you can Good Human Fitness Facebook too, but Instagram's definitely where I'm most active. I live in Southern California, Santa Monica. So if you're local, we can obviously figure out something to treat here. I do travel to treat,
right.
Obviously not for one person.
Right,
but if we can help get a group of people, so it's enough on my end, happy to fly out. I was just out in South Carolina at my friend's gym, breaking bars in Manning, which was awesome, and treated a bunch of his members.
What's the cost to get treatment if you're not a veteran or
$135
okay.
For an hour. Okay. And then anything you're open. I'm not going to give you a meal plan, but we will definitely give little pieces of homework if you're open to it. So usually I like to send people away with homework. I don't like it to just be come see me because I want people to also feel empowered to help themselves.
Yep.
It should be a learning thing, not just a fix me thing.
And the meal plan, like, what's the cost on that if someone wants to get a meal plan from you? Like, hey, I want to work with you. I want you to give me a meal plan. Is there like a set cost for that? Is it person to person?
It's a set cost. It's $180 for 4 weeks. It's all custom stuff. So again, starting with my questionnaire, and I don't know, these rates may change. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, for sure. But I want to throw that out there because there's so many other people out there that are trying to offer. And you're like, you don't know, like, I don't even know what a good price is.
And it's different. Some people are like, oh, it's really expensive. I'm like, that's okay. Find what works for you. Everything I do is one-on-one, all specific as you've gathered at this point about that person, where they are, where they've been, where they want to be, what their life is like right now.
Yeah.
So 4-week blocks. Same with training, 4-week blocks. And if you're in home, that's cool. You let me know what you have access to, what you're willing to get to work with if it's at home.
And you work with males and females?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yep. Anybody who's ready to do it. I don't want to waste anyone's time or money if you're not actually ready to do the work. But you also don't have to be ready to do everything you think probably to have change start to happen.
So I'm going to ask you a couple questions that I ask everyone that comes on. The first one being, if you had one book or one person that inspired you the most throughout your entire life, or just that's inspiring you now, who would that person be? What would that book be, and why?
Oh, there's like a billion people I could answer this with. I'm actually going to do a book. I think I haven't read it in forever, but my dad, who is actually someone who inspires me a lot, suggested I read years ago. I think it was called just Ishmael. And it was basically about givers and takers in the planet. Some people are givers, some people are takers. And I actually realized I have so many books I'm trying to read, but I do want to read that one again. I think it's been 15 years since I've read it, probably.
Do you remember the author?
Nope, but I can get it to you.
That's good. So Ishmael, I mean, I'm sure.
I think that was the name of it, Ishmael.
I mean, I'm sure if I look up a book called Ishmael, I think there's not going to be that many.
Yeah, and I feel like there was a gorilla and his name was Ishmael. I feel like that's what it was. I'm only vaguely remembering it, but it was all about givers and takers in life, in the planet, people who take from the planet, people who give to each other as well.
Have you read The Giving Tree? Have you seen the book The Giving Tree?
Heard of it and have not read it. Have I read it?
It sounds similar to that.
I don't think this was like the person who thought of all this, but it was a nice book though.
Yeah, for sure. And that sounds very similar to The Giving Tree, which is like, it's a small read or whatever. And and it's about the same topic. It goes to the tree and then they take away for this, and the tree keeps giving itself.
Yes.
Yeah,
wait, that was Shel Silverstein?
I think it is, actually.
Or is it a poem or a book?
I think it's a short book.
I don't even remember now. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I do remember that. I have read it. So I just like that, especially being someone who is a giver. I'm always learning and having to watch myself, because I have definitely been in situations where I'm like, oh, okay, you're just a taker.
Right.
I do feel like I endlessly am able to give, which I'm grateful for, because a lot of people need and can benefit from that. But it's important, I think, especially when you're a giver, to make sure I don't expect people to give the same way I do, but if you're only taking, that's not a good relationship on any level. So I would say that book that I think is called Ishmael, and I don't remember who wrote it. I'm also the worst at remembering that kind of stuff, like titles and authors.
And the person you'd say is your dad?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lot. He was definitely a big one for things to do and things not to do even. There's a lot of me in him, and there's a lot of things I'm different about. A lot of it is because of MA, too, her influence on me.
Right. Is she still alive?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's
she
awesome.
actually lives really locally, which is great.
So you call her mom and everything, like she's like your mom?
I don't.
Really?
I reference her just because I think I was a certain age when she came into my life.
Yeah.
So I reference her as that because she's that person for me.
Yeah.
But I just call her MA.
Does she have any other kids?
She does not.
So she does not. One.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we have an awesome relationship.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Very open, honest, respectful. I came to realize later in life I was much closer to her than a lot of my friends were with their moms and they lived with. I mean, I grew up. I was so yes, my mom passed away when I was 4, but I had such a good childhood. Like I was so lucky to be in a home where I felt loved and supported. For a while, it was, just my dad. And I have an older brother who's awesome, and 2 amazing nephews. Like so loved, so supported. And didn't have the money or whatever that people associate with, but whatever. Money in my family went to education, which is why I went to the school I went to. Totally. Came out of it with debt that you would get out of college, but for me, totally worth it. Yeah. Like such a good school, such a good fit for me. And between the 2 of them, like so supported, so loved.
You're like living proof that it's all about the story you tell yourself.
Absolutely.
So like if you look at your life, right, and it's like you lost your mom at 4 years old, a lot of people can look at that story and be like, oh,
right,
she's so damaged and like she didn't have her mom, and it's a sad story. It's terrible that you lost your mom at such a young age, but you made the best of a bad situation, and fortunately you had people in your life that picked up the pieces, and filled in some of those gaps for you.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like a sense of loss that you didn't have your actual mom? Do you remember her, like being that you were only 4?
I have like one actual memory. Thankfully, because of my dad's photography, I have so many pictures of her. But I only have one real memory. So I never. I mean, I think there's like a sense of loss on one level because I didn't have that person.
Right.
But I think because I also had someone step into those shoes, and we have such an amazing relationship, and I had such an amazing relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
I never felt like I was missing out or that I was less than because of that. It was just that was my story. That was my situation.
It's really cool.
That's what I knew. Yeah. I think I'm also wired a certain way.
You're like the most bubbly, you have this like, I told you this when I first met you, like, you have such good energy, like every time I'm around you, I'm like, so like, it's like that mother like energy, where it's like, you feel comfortable with you. Like I walked into this apartment and I'm like, you just had like, your home is just comfortable. Everything's cool.
And I'm so grateful for that because I think it lets me do what I do. Like I said, I feel like I have this endless supply, since I'm really cheesy. Like I feel like I have this endless supply of sunshine, and come at me with as much darkness as you have. It's okay. Like I don't lose any of my sunshine and my light.
Do you ever get down? Do you ever get down?
Not down. I mean, sure. I have moments where there's been sadness. Yeah. I'm like when I lost my dad, I was so close to him, and I lost him when I was 29. Super sad, worst fucking day ever.
Yeah.
Also for me, very black and white with death. I don't go down that realm of why, because no answer makes it better. Huh? I'm so grateful that I had such an amazing relationship with him. Super unfortunate that it ended so soon, but I think he did such a good job with me and my brother that like, I think I got so much of his goodness, that, I mean, I'm not someone who's ever been depressed, thankfully. And I know it's not a common thing for people to say. I do think I'm oddly wired in a certain way where, I kind of don't know how else to describe it really. And I'm grateful for it because I think it also lets me do what I do for a living. Yeah. I'm in an industry, personal training industry, where people get burnt out all the time. Yeah. And I'm also I'm pretty good at saying no and knowing what I need for myself to be fresh and be on point, personally and professionally. So I'm decent at setting boundaries. But I've never felt burnt out once in the 16 plus years I've been doing this. Yeah. And I don't feel drained energetically when I work with people, especially when I'm treating people with MPS. When I have back to back, like I'll be in a vortex when I go like to Elmer's gym breaking bars. Like I'm in an office, I'm just treating people. They're coming in. Okay, who's next? And he's like, dude, you've been going for like 8 hours. He's like, are you tired? I'm like, not at all. It's like the opposite. Yeah. Like it fuels me.
That's really cool.
So yeah, however I've been put together physiologically, mentally, because of the people in my life, whatever it is, all of it, it works so well for me. And I'm so grateful for that. So I can keep doing what I do personally and be the friend and the aunt and the daughter and the sister that I am. Yeah. And I love what I do. I've never not loved what I've done. I've never questioned if this was what I was supposed to be doing once I got to this point. Yeah. I think for me, and I'm not saying I practice medicine, but this is how I was supposed to be practicing medicine, air quote. And it works well for me, and the people who connect well with me, it works well for them too. And I love it.
I think you're in a perfect spot.
Yeah.
It's like being like a counselor almost, because people are coming to you. It's very intimate, when you're training somebody. It's like they're sharing their vulnerabilities with you, their insecurities with you, and like whatever. And you're open to that. And it's like,
I just want it to be as safe as a space as I can.
Totally. I feel that. The other question is, if you had one lesson that you learned while you were growing up that you wish you could teach like the younger you, so you didn't have to go through the heartache, or you can teach a younger person that's coming up in the world a lesson that you wish you would have known at a younger age, what would that lesson be and why?
So bad at these kind of questions. Can I audit this a little bit and say it's more something that I did learn early?
Totally.
And okay. This is why I was so bad at multiple choice. I'm like, well, this could work because, and I think I imagine part of this is because I've had loss early, and people, I'm not saying anything new, but life is short.
Right.
I really do feel that love wins. And I think part of why I am the way I am is because I grew up in a house that was emotionally, verbally, physically very loving. We hugged all the time. We said, I love you. The last thing I said to my dad was, I love you, because we were on the phone. I was in New York visiting my brother. That was the last thing we both said was, I love you, all of us to each other.
Yeah.
If the more, and this takes work for some people, for all people, some more than others, but if you can come from a place of love, that has to start with yourself. But if your intention behind what you do comes from a place of love, it just makes everything better. I'm not saying everything's easy, but it puts you in the right path for yourself, for your family, for other people, anyone you interact with. And it's just a better energy to have. Like, yes, you can love someone and things can go wrong, but when you're angry, when you're mean, all things that happen. But when you stay there and live there, there's just no way things are going to be good for you in the very least, let alone other people that you come in contact with.
Yeah.
And the more you can come from a place of love and let people know that are important to you, that you love them, I think you can never start that too soon. And I think it's something, it shouldn't be used loosely, but I think it's something that should be said. I think it's something that should be felt. I try my best for the people in my life to not have them question their importance to me. Yeah. I don't tell everyone in my life I love them, but if you're in my life, especially on any more than acquaintance level, I want you to feel important. And if you don't, I'm not up to par on my end.
Right.
So I think just the more you can come from a place of love, the better. Yeah. And again, it takes work. It's not easy, whatever it is, but I just think everything's better when you come from a place of love.
For sure. That's funny. Somebody asked me that question on a Facebook post that I had put up or something like that. It was a picture of like me 20 years ago and a picture of me now. And I was having this like little debate with Kathleen. Like, do I look I mean, Brendan thinks I look the same. I think I look the same. Like, I mean, granted, I have like some gray hairs, whatever, like a couple wrinkles in the eyes, but like for the most part, I think I look the same. Like there's people that I knew from high school that like you knew them in high school, you look at a picture from then you look at them now, it's like you look nothing like you did in high school. And Kathleen's one of them.
Yeah, I look very similar as well.
She doesn't look like she did in high school at all. She's like 20 times more beautiful. Not that she wasn't beautiful like then, but like she's way more beautiful now in my opinion. And she looks different. She just looks different. But anyway, I put that picture up and then somebody asked me like, so what, forget about the looks, like what would you tell that person? Like if you were like now, if you can go now as an adult and talk to that person, what would you say to him?
To my younger version
to
of myself?
me, someone was asking me that.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the things that I said. That was my response, was that, you know, like, don't let your insecurities get the best of you. Take off the mask, you know, be who you are. Don't compromise your values. And the last thing I said was love wins. And the reason
one of
I
my
said
hashtags for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so accurate because when you come from a place of anger, resentment, whatever, being pissed off all the time, like your life will be a direct reflection of that. I've lived it. I know.
Yeah. And those are real. Those are legitimate things. And it's not easy to just be like, okay, I'm gonna love and I'm gonna whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Because hurt's gonna come in.
For sure.
There's gonna be things that like, because I tried it for a long time. Like, I'm just gonna love everyone. It's gonna be totally cool and be like,
it has to be real though, right?
Totally like violent hippie, you know? And so I tried, and a lot of the things that came up for me were like just disappointment, like getting let down by people. Like there was no reciprocity. It's like you feel like you're giving your all and then like it's not reciprocated. You're like, ouch. And so my uncle actually told me once, he said, you know, expectations equal disappointment. So the less expectations you have of other people, the better you're going to feel. And just let it go. Like, just do what you do because it's your value. It's who you are as a person. It's your character.
Right.
Don't expect anything in return.
Right. Well, definitely. I think you can't. It's like giving a gift. You shouldn't give a gift because of what you want to get back as a gift. Right. You need to, whatever it is you're doing, you should be doing it because it feels right for you to do it and you genuinely want to.
Right.
And if things are reciprocated, cool. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are in a way that you feel or someone else would perceive as less than what you gave, whatever. I think when you do it with the intention of reciprocation, especially in certain things, that's not how you should enter into it. And it shouldn't be an expected thing. I mean, it can also be, okay, this person isn't someone that needs to be part of my life, you know, especially if respect and honesty and being kind is not what's coming back at you or even coming at you, period, by anybody. But yeah, I think when you just are doing things for the right reason, and as much of it can come from a place of love, and the more you can move yourself in that direction, again, everyone's different, and that takes time and work, and usually a lot of work on yourself for some people. And that's okay, right? And that's hard work. And I think you can find when you share conversations with people, I think for some people like won't relate to me because I've had certain hardships. I haven't had other hardships. I haven't been depressed. I haven't ever wanted to take my life. You know, there's certain things that I can't ever relate to certain people with.
You empathize with. You just
absolutely. You're a human being,
right?
At the end of the day, you're a human being, and whatever way I can support you being the best version of yourself, I'd like to. Yeah. If that's just me being your friend, great. If that's me being a practitioner on some level, if it's both, whatever. Yeah. And if you're not in a place to receive that from me, okay, I hope someday you are from someone. Yeah. Right. And there's a lot of other people who do what I do or other things similar. And maybe one of those people will resonate with you when it's right for you. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you big time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your story. And I seriously, genuinely wish you like tons of success in what you're doing. And I really do believe that like when you're in your purpose and like when you're doing things that light you on fire and that don't feel like work for you, you're bound to be successful.
How can you not, you know, when it's what you love? And again, I think success is measured very differently. I don't want to ever be worrying about paying my bills, but you know, I think going to bed with a happy heart and a happy soul is a good thing. I leave so many situations where I'm like, and it just sounds cheesy to some people, but I'm like, my heart is so full right now. Like, I mean, I've cried tears of joy leaving certain things before because of, I'm like, this is so where I'm supposed to be.
Definitely.
Right.
It's a great feeling when you're in the flow.
You know, and sometimes you're like, okay, I don't need to do that again.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way to know until I did it.
I tell people it's like a drug. Once you experience that flow and that huge sense of gratitude and joy, it's like a drug that you'll always chase. Because I've only experienced it a couple times in my life where it's like I was at total peace, like nothing can bother me, like I was just on point.
Right.
And And I've chased it ever since. Like, I need to get back to that because like that was such a blissful moment, like such a blissful time in my life where like everything was in line. I was on purpose and everything was good.
And that's the thing to pay attention to. I think it's easy to try to recreate that exact moment, but it's not that exact moment. You have to kind of look at, pan out a bit and see what were all of the things factoring in.
A lot of it was internal. A lot of it was like my own internal dialogue, right?
Absolutely. And even where you were physically, where you were emotionally, who was in your life more or less. Yeah. This may seem silly, but where were you living? What was the weather like at that? Like all of those things can influence it. What was your nutrition like? Right. What was your sleep like? What were levels of anxiety like? So many things can factor in, and the more we can recreate what seem like the key players into the good stuff, the better.
Yeah.
And hopefully that carries over into other things as well.
100%. Well, thank you again so much. And if you guys are digging the podcast, if you would please do me a favor and go on iTunes and subscribe and rate it if you like it, because it really does help. And if you guys want to go on YouTube and check it out, you can also subscribe on YouTube under My Backstory. So thank you so much, Zamia, for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for making the drive.
Yeah, for sure. Look forward to linking up again soon.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.